Hello and welcome to RPG Special Storytime Edition with your host, Rap Proof. And we're going to be finishing War Crimes Part 2, so prepare yourself for some intense spoilers. Easy go. So thank you for joining me for story time. We're just roasting by the fire here, so don't mind all the crackling noises in the background because it gets loud. A lot of tree sap in this one, so don't mind the pops, random pops. So anyways, where we left off was they had just finished up with Tyranda's first witness, Velen, right? And he gave some pretty good testimony for both sides, even when Bane was able to question him as well. So now we're moving on to Tyranda's next witness. Here in chapter 9 is where we are now. And Tyranda calls her second witness, which is Corjuice. Corjuice! He is a mushroom vendor in the store called Dark Earth in the Cleft of Shadow underneath Orgrimmar. So some of us can find that spot, and we know where that is. So Tyranda here, she shows 2 visions of time using that little hourglass thingy, right? Where she can call up visions and everybody can see the past and whatnot. So Corjuice is an honorable orc, an honorable mushroom vendor and farmer, and he gets beaten to a pulp, and that's one of the visions that she shows everybody. So the first one, shown by the hourglass, Corjuice gets beaten to a pulp by Corcron thugs. 5 of them, 5 against 1, and they go over there just to prove a point. And they're like, "You can't speak out against our war chief." And Corjuice is like, wait, I need to quote him. Corjuice be like, "The horde is not made up of slaves. Each member is of value. I can speak against my war chief's decisions without conspiring against him." So he raises a really good point. Freedom of speech, which is what the horde is all about. Like, we could talk, doesn't mean we're conspiring to kill our war chief or anything, but we're allowed to have our opinion. So he raises a good point, but then the Corcron people be like, "No, you can't," and they beat him up. They break his nose, they break his arm, and he lost a lot of teeth too. He was a bloody mess, and everybody in the courtroom gets to see it. So you feel really bad for him. But then, so she brings up a second vision of time, and which is the explosion of the Razor Hill Inn. And this caught the interest of Lady Sylvanas and the Blood Elf King, who didn't know where a couple of their people had gone. They just disappeared. And those people were Captain Frandis Farley, which worked an undead under the command of Lady Sylvanas, and the other was Killantir Bloodblade. Corjuice makes an excellent witness right here because he was there at the Razor Hill Inn at this explosion, which not many people knew about. So he was here trying to hide from the Corcron leader Malkarok, which was ironic because Malkarok came here to the inn to look for this undead and blood elf in particular, where they were trying to, meet in secret, I think. And they're talking about how they're not really content with the war chief and all that stuff. But here, when Malkarok enters, it was a real change of scenery, and they tried to play it off real casual, like, "Oh, we're just here, we're just hanging out, we're just on orders, and just here on business, and we decided to stop for a drink," and they're trying to be really casual about it. And Malkarok's just not. He's like, okay, he's playing along. And then Corjuice, the mushroom vendor, he slips out undetected because he's trying to hide from the Corcron. He's not trying to get himself any attention being in this place. So he's able to make it out. Malkarok leaves and then bars the doors shut. So this undead and this blood elf were trapped in there, and then kaboosh. the whole thing blows up, and everybody knows what happened there. Everybody knows that they're rebuilding Razor Hill, and this was just now everybody saw it. Now everybody knows what happened, and it was the Kor'kron who silenced their own people, and just because they didn't agree with the war chief's tactics or spoke out against the war chief, Garrosh Hellscream. So that's like huge censorship on the Horde's part, which does it's really good evidence for Tyranda's side that for a harsh sentence, because he turned against his own people, his own Horde. So this is damning evidence. So chapter 10 goes into Bane's cross-questioning of the same witness, Core Juice, the mushroom vendor in Orgrimmar, and basically he tries to okay, Bane's pissed. He thought the explosion at Razor Hill Inn was an accident, and he had no idea that it was done by the hand of the Horde on purpose to kill their own very important people, and who are very missed right now. So he's already upset going into this, and he's like trying to think of, okay, his line of questioning now. His head's racing. So he goes in and asks Core Juice, do you know if these orders to beat you up for speaking out, or countless others that were also victim of the Kor'kron, and this explosion included, do you know if these orders were directly from Garrosh? And Core Juice is speculating, well, we all know that it had to be, because it was in, Garrosh's name that this was done. But do you know if Garrosh had any knowledge? And do you know that these orders directly came? Like, did you hear Garrosh himself give these orders? And Core Juice is like, oh, come on. No, of course not. But this was the Kor'kron, the pretty much personal bodyguard to the war chief, right? So he was like, no, you're speculating. Just answer the question. Do you know if this order was directly from Garrosh? And he's like, no. Okay, no. So, and it's like, okay, so no further questions. So this could have possibly been done, though, is pretty much what he's trying to say, is this could have been done without Garrosh's knowledge. And that's kind of a stretch, but yeah, it's possible. All those things done by the Kor'kron could have been done without Garrosh's knowledge. So then, very satisfied, Bane goes back down, and he's like, okay, I made somewhat of an effort. And then Tyrande gets back up, and she asks that the charges be read again, the charges against Garrosh. So here we are. One that she, in particular, wanted to really stress at this point was, for all acts committed in Garrosh's name. So he is being tried for that too. So she reiterates, this still counts. This was an act committed in Garrosh's name, so this is going to count against him. So, she sticks it to him again. Tyrande makes yet another good point. Very good point, Tyrande. Very good point. So, of course, cocky, self-righteous Tyrande just has to rub it in just a little bit more by, when she makes her little point or whatever, she has to go and say, oh, these are the moments when I think things are so obvious. My presence here is not even necessary. Yeah, she actually said I was quoting her. And that's when Bane jumps up and he's like, that's so unnecessary. Thank you, Bane. He says the accuser's comment is completely inappropriate, and stamps his little hoof. And she just smiles, and holds up a hand. I withdraw the statement, and I apologize to my esteemed colleague, and I have no further questions. What a little, oh God, an arrogant little prick. So Bane asks for a short recess to confer with the accused, Garrosh, and he's kind of getting on Garrosh a little bit, because he's like, what are you doing, Garrosh? I mean, what are you doing, Garrosh? you're showing no interest in these proceedings. And Garrosh is like, because I have no interest in these proceedings. And it's like, do you truly desire execution, Garrosh? I mean, really? Really, Garrosh? You really want to be executed? And Garrosh is like, execution? No. Well, no. If I were to die in glorious battle against the likes of this priestess charged with damning me, then yes, I would prefer that, because he knows he could crush Tyrande. He's like, I'd rather die in glorious combat. I don't want to just be executed. Can't blame him for that. So, yeah, no. But at the same time, he admits, come on, let's be real here. Let's be real here, Bloodhoof. Nobody's gonna let me out for another battle. Nobody. So he's given up. And his attitude, his whole expression, it shows it. And that's what Bane is trying to get him to stop. Just stop. You know, you can still fight here for yourself, but Garrosh is like, nah, I'm cool. So recess is over, and now it's time for Tyrande to call her next witness, which is so exciting. It is Varrock Sourfang. Oh, so I didn't know this until I read this part here, but when he's called to introduce himself, and he's up on the stand, he says, I am Varrock Sourfang, brother to Broxigar! Broxigar! Oh my god. Father to Dranosh, I serve the Horde. Broxigar being one of the great heroes, not just of the Horde, but of Azeroth. So this is huge. Tyrande knows Broxigar. You read about their encounter in the Well of Eternity. She had the first, one of the first interactions with an orc, and he was brought back into time to the Well of Eternity time. But that's another book series. That's another thing. But it's surely someone who even Tyrande could respect. She knew Broxigar as a great war hero who jumped through the portal to stop Sargeras from crossing the portal into Azeroth for his first attempt to invading Azeroth. And there was nobody else. They would not have been able to stop him from coming through if it wasn't for Broxigar jumping through there so valiantly, and he became the only mortal to ever wound Sargeras. So I mean, he's huge. He's made his name, and now his brother. Who knew his brother? Oh my! I didn't know. I didn't know, but I was really excited to find this out. In this brother to Broxigar, that is so cool. It's just so cool. I'm kind of impressed. That gives Sourfangs like a little more status in my book. But Tyrande is kind of falsely buttering him up. She's trying to say, oh, you're a great war hero of the Lich King, and he's like, me and many others, or we fought against the Lich King's darkness. I'm not the only one, and I don't ask for special treatment. So, God, he's such a badass. When he like tries to put Tyrande in her place and reminds her, you know, it's just, I'm not the only person who fought against the Lich King, dumb woman. So but he can feel like there's a false sense of buttering him up. And like, what is she getting at? Like, really, like, what is she gonna do? He already doesn't trust her, and he has a good reason not to trust her. I wouldn't trust her, because she tries to use her Vision of Time session to show everybody the death of his son, which if we played the game, if any of you guys played the game, during the Lich King's expansion, Sourfang's son, Dranosh, he dies and gets reanimated as a Death Knight, and his father has to kill him again, and he's still mourning the loss of his son, and he has to go up against his son as a Death Knight and put an end to him, which is a really tough thing to do. And Bane Bloodhoof, he objects to this. He jumps up and he's like, no, we are not putting him through that again. He's already lost his son. We don't need to show him killing his son just to make what kind of point? What is that going to do? Come on, don't be that heartless. He's been through enough. So rightfully, Terran Zoo agrees with Bane that he tells him the court recognizes that Varrock Sourfang is a respected war hero and has undergone great loss. But we don't see how that has a bearing with his interactions with Garrosh. The Lich King is not the one on trial here, so, you know, but put Tyrande back in her place, man. What's she trying to do? What's she trying to pull? She's pulling unnecessary things, causing a lot of people, or trying to cause people a lot of pain, but they saw through her BS, and they put a stop to that, so they didn't allow her to show that, thank God. So now Tyrande has to change what vision she was going to present, and she chooses to present a time when Sourfang confronted Garrosh about their tactics. So we're brought into this scene in like the war room where they're, you know, trying to decide their tactics and where their points of attack or whatever, and they're going over that together, and Sourfang's being very patient with Garrosh, and Garrosh is just kind of he has a little interest in trade routes and specific things. He just wants to go and kill things. And so Varrock Sourfang, he's trying to really at this time he is a High Overlord at this point in time. So High Overlord Sourfang. They're talking about their tactics, and this is during the time of Northrend. They're gonna go into Northrend and to deal with the Lich King. So this is the vision that Tyrande chooses to pull up. So Overlord Sourfang has to really put Garrosh in his place right here, and this is a point where he really he compared him to his father, and saying that Gromhel's scream was headstrong, very much like you, and look at where it got him. You do not be like your father, or I will kill you. So Tyrande wanted that threat to be known in the courtroom, that in a private setting, Sourfang vowed that he would kill Garrosh if he were to ever bring the Horde back down in honor and take away the honor from the Horde again. If you were, he tells him, if you were ever to go down that path that your father was taking, you know, I'll kill you before you drag the Horde down with you. So it was a very legit, it seemed like it hit Garrosh a little bit in the feels, and he kind of softened in that scene that we're watching a little bit, but obviously, I mean, it didn't take much. Eventually, Sourfang did call arms against Garrosh eventually, so we all know that he followed through on that promise. So this is actually a really good point that Tyrande brings up, that he does deserve the death penalty, because even this great orc, you know, went to call arms against Garrosh. So obviously she pointed out the fact that many of the Horde believes that he should die. He should be executed, and so that's where she stopped her testimony, or her questioning. And now it's Bane's turn to go and question this Sourfang, and he asks him again, did you really mean what you said, you know, once again? And he's like, yeah, I meant what I said. So you would actually kill Garrosh with your own hands? And he's like, yeah. And you believe he has led the orcs down a dark path? And he said, yeah, that's why I took up arms against him. The sort of things that he did. And so then he says, really good question, by Bane Bloodhoof, so you would be happy with the verdict that you shall Whisperwind advocates? Execution? And then Sourfang's like, no. And everybody's like shocked and whispering. They're like, then he asks him, what would you like to see? And Tyrande tries to protest, but then, you know, they we don't need to know that truth. But Taranzu allows it, and he makes Sourfang answer the question, what would you like to see done with Garrosh then, if not execution? And Sourfang says, Garrosh was not always as you see him now. He was, as I have said, reckless and impulsive. But I once would never have doubted his loyalty to the Horde, and even now I do not doubt his loyalty to his people. But his crimes must be addressed. I vowed to kill him, and I would still uphold that vow. But I would not surrender him to others for execution. I would challenge him myself in the Mak'gora. So then Bane asks him, so do you think he deserves a second chance? To which Sourfang's answer, if he defeated me, yes, that is the way of the orcs, the true way called honor. So he believes that if he won a fight against him in a Mak'gora, a fair fight, fight to the death, a challenge, and he beat him, and Garrosh beat Sourfang, then yes, he does deserve a second chance. And he says that's the most honorable way to go about it. That's the orc way, not just a blind execution where he doesn't have a fighting chance to defend himself, and if he won, he deserves to live. And this really surprised everyone, even Tyrande, like, oh my god, what an honorable way. But she's just getting mad and bitter about it because that's Tyrande for you now. And but it really did make a really nice impression in the audience about the orc way. They're not just a bunch of savages, they're honorable savages. But this testimony alone, it gave Bane a little bit of closure as to what had happened to his own father dying in a Mak'gora. And it made Bane feel pretty good, and he felt confident in closing his argument there, or his line of questioning there with Sourfang. So thank you for tuning in to this edition of Storytime doing War Crimes. Next episode will be, or part 3, whatever, will be on Next Witness, Anduin Wrynn. So stay tuned for the next video. I'll be going over that and a few more chapters. So see you guys next time. Thanks for tuning in.